Hi, my name is Missy Rednour, and I will be doing a speech on human trafficking. And this is my audience. Thanks, guys.
Hi.
Let me tell you a story about Steven. He is 16 years old, and he lives in a small city in northern Uganda. One night, while him and his brothers were sleeping, some men just abruptly broke into their home and then kidnapped him. And what those men were doing, they forced Stephen and his brothers to join the country's freedom army. Part of the initiation process for that was they were beaten almost to the end of their life. And then once they were initiated, they were anointed with warm oil as a welcome into the army. These boys, 16 and under, were forced to be in an army and were forced to be soldiers. They had no idea what the cause was for or why they were there. They just knew that they had to pretend to like to be soldiers in order to survive. Human trafficking is very huge. Human trafficking generates $31 billion annually and enslaves 27 million people a year around the globe. Half of them are children under the age 18. Slavery is a status or condition of a person who is being held against their will. The slave trade includes all acts of capture, acquisition, or disposal, or even transporting. It could be defined as selling, exchanging, or transporting. What we need to do is to stop child trafficking. What child trafficking does, it violates human rights and exploits innocent children. It involves the sale of human beings, men, women, and children. And it includes all regions around the world, from international to national. The global routes are just everywhere, and they're very hard to monitor. What I'd like to do is make you aware of what human trafficking is, but I'm going to focus on child trafficking. There are 5 major categories that a child could be put into an enslavement. The first one is probably the most severe, is sex trade. They are sold into prostitution so they can make money for their traffickers. The other one is they're seduced. They're seduced by older men. This seducing can be on an online seducing, or it could be just in a rural country where a man comes into the village and goes to the family and says, I'm going to take care of your child. Your young girl is going to go work in a nice fancy restaurant. She'll be taken care of and we'll send money to you. That never happens. The other is forced labor, where a child is forced to sell stuff on the side of the street, roses, blankets, or whatever, and they can earn as little as 38 cents a day, and a lot of times they only get to eat once a day. Or they're abducted, as Stephen was, taken from the homes in the middle of the night and forced to be a soldier. Or they can be sold to peddle things, or worse, if you're a girl, you can be sold into a brothel. And if a family owns a wealthy man a major debt, you can sell your child to pay off the debt. But the wealthy man will make the debt so high that that debt will never be paid off. What I'd like to make you aware of is human trafficking. So, waiting for freedom and fighting for freedom. This minute, innocent people are being beaten, abused, and enslaved. And we as a society have the right, have the capability to stop this immoral injustice. How we can do this is increase awareness. We become educated of what child trafficking is, how we can stop it, and how we can see what it is, to just be able to recognize the signs. Even though it's a national law, and it's against the law to do any type of human slavery in any form. A lot of times the states, they enforce the law, but the enforcement isn't, say, unified. Say one state will be very strict, and the neighboring state isn't as strict. So the sex traffickers know that, so they know which states to avoid and which states they can go through. Training for law enforcement is a huge plus. If a police officer were to pull over an older man and a young girl, and he suspects that this is not an appropriate relationship, there's something wrong. He looks at the young girl's body language and see how she's dressed, especially for the weather. If she's wearing a skinny dress for cold weather, he knows something's wrong. What happens is he'll arrest both of them And the girl who's under 18, she'll be charged with prostitution. She's too timid, too scared to say otherwise. So she'll be charged because the officer has no choice. They give her opportunities, but she's scared that if she says what's really happening to her, she'll be beaten later. The environment. This pertains to more of the rural countries, where the women and children have to travel great distances just to get water. We take it for granted. We can go to our kitchen sink and get water. Well, they can't. What happens is while they're traveling, men abduct the women and children and take them and sell them into slavery. So by bringing the water support and supply into the village, that keeps the women and children safe. The benefits to this solution is, especially in Idaho, is being aware of what child slavery is and how to handle it. Even though it's really not a key or major problem in Idaho, but being aware of it will keep it from becoming a problem. National and international. By, again, enforcing unified punishment, it will help traffickers from trafficking children. Birth registration. This is more in the rural nations. A lot of times there is an education of what a birth certificate is. So one way to prove how old a young girl is to have a birth certificate. At the same time, a birth certificate gives that child rights. Counseling needs to be provided. By providing counseling, this will help the child that's coming out of prostitution or forced labor to be able to move on to life, and maybe even a wonderful possibility would be to let the authorities know of where they can go to capture some of the offenders or the traffickers. The action that you can take. There are 5 things. Listen, learn, and speak about human trafficking. Be aware. That is such a key thing, is to be aware. Get involved in an agency who is committed to the issue. Just check them out and make sure they're really committed. Give monetary support. A lot of these agencies are nonprofit and they live on donations. An example, some agencies that you could give money to be Justice Mission, Let's Respond, Not for Sale, Shared Hope International, and the Polars Project. You can just Google these and they pull right up, and just take a look at their websites. It tells them about their missions and everything that they're involved in. Also, here's a key thing that you need to have in your phone, in your cell phone. The phone number is 888-373-7888. This is the national hotline for human trafficking. You call this first before you call a police officer, because these people are trained and they can set up observations, they can listen to what you saw, and they can determine if it's really happening. For example, there was a police officer stopped an older gentleman coming from Canada, and he had 6 girls with him. And when the police officer questioned, "What are you doing? How are you guys doing?" the older gentleman just basically said, "I'm taking these girls to the grandma." Well, that wasn't the case. So even police officers, they're aware, but they need more training. And also the police officers use this number that I just gave you to help them determine whether it's a sex trafficking or human trafficking case at all. I've got a couple of tools that helped me in my research that I think would be beneficial for you guys to look at. One is Child Slavery Now by Gary Craig. Not for Sale by David Batstone. This is they're both really good, easy reads. Got a couple of movies. The movie Taken. This one deals with more of the teenager going to Europe, tourist kind of thing, how they can be spotted and how they can be taken. Slumdog Millionaire. This one deals with child labor, forced labor, and prostitution. So, in summary, human trafficking is not an issue of the left or the right, a blue state or a red state. state, but a great moral tragedy. We can unite it to stop. I have hoped to have brought you some awareness on what human trafficking is, and then gives you some tools and aid in joining the fight to prevent it. And here's my website, Missie Rednour at mycwi.cc. So if you have any more questions or if you want any links or anything to get more information on this, that would be great. All right, you have a good day, and thank you much.